Along the way, the wagons would most likely have to fend off attacks from hostile Indians. Two young boys sat high up on the seat of the second wagon. Al wished that he could climb right up there beside them and join their great adventure westward. The sight of the prairie schooners filled Al with more questions than he could find the answers to. What did the Great Plains look like? Did Indians really paint their faces when they went on the war path and attacked settlers? What did gold look like in the ground? And how did they melt it down and get it to stick together in large blocks like the ones he had once seen at the bank? Al sighed as he continued on his way along the street toward the shingle mill. Questions, 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 questions. He had so many questions, in fact. One of his father's workers at the mill had joked one day that it would cost Mr. Edison less to hire a man to answer all Al's questions than to have Al constantly interrupting their work to ask them about things. The town of Milan was located on the Huron River, and a canal had been built to connect the town to Lake Erie. As a result, Milan had a busy port, where grain and other commodities were loaded onto boats and barges for shipment overseas and to other American cities. In fact, Al's father, Samuel Edison, had told Al that Milan was the second largest wheat shipping port in the world, after the city of Odessa in the Ukraine, though Al was not quite sure where that was. This was another question he was in search of an answer for. Large warehouses and grain silos lined the docks of the port, and as Al walked along, his curiosity got the better of him. He strolled over to watch a barge being loaded with grain. He was fascinated with how the grain was flowing from one of the silos into the barge. Before he knew it, he had set down the basket containing his father's lunch and was climbing up the side of the silo for a better look. Al clambered on top of the silo and crawled over to the edge of the opening in the top. He peered inside, but it was too dark to see much. As he leaned farther inside the opening for a better look, he overbalanced and found himself tumbling head first into the darkness. He fell about 10 feet and landed with a thud on his back on top of the mound of wheat that filled the silo. He thrashed about, trying to make it to the side of the silo where he hoped he might be able to find some handholds and pull himself back up to the opening. Instead of moving toward the side with each thrash of his arms and legs, Al found himself sinking deeper into the grain, into a sea of wheat. And of course the fear that came with this realization caused him to thrash about even harder. "Hold on, boy! Stop moving like that or you'll drown in wheat!" A voice boomed through the darkness. Al stopped, looked up, and saw a face peering over the edge of the opening above him. "I'm going to lower a rope down to you. I want you to wrap it under your arms and tie a knot in it. Then I'll pull you out. Do you understand?" "Yes," Al replied weakly. He did as he was instructed, and a few minutes later he was sitting back on top of the grain silo. "Lucky I saw you climbing up there," the man said with a stern look on his face. "If the wheat didn't drown you, you would have suffocated from all the dust. A silo is no place for a young boy like you to be playing." Al nodded sheepishly and then scrambled down the side of the silo, picked up his father's lunch basket, and went on his way, determined to never again see the inside of a grain silo that close. He hated to think of what his father would say when he found out about the incident. Thankfully, Al was spared a whipping. His father told him that being that scared was lesson enough. As time went on, Al had one particular question that bothered him, and for which he had not yet been able to get a satisfactory answer. The question had to do with fire. Al had seen the benefits of fire all around him. His mother cooked their meals over the open hearth in the kitchen, and the house was lit at night with lanterns and candles. Al had often wished that he could take one of the lanterns down and experiment with it, but his father strictly forbade him to do so. Still, his question remained. What kind of things would fire burn? But of course, one question was never enough for Al.